What made me decide to? So I've been involved in a number of different secular groups, free thought groups, atheist groups, whatever. And I'd heard about Sunday Assembly because they were getting, a lot of traction online. Yeah, just walk on through.
Sorry if I mean.
No worries. So I'd heard about it, and it sounded really interesting because it was like they were getting 200 and 300 people. And I was like, The biggest misconception is that we are untrustworthy, that we're immoral, that it's all relative, like whatever I decide is good, if it's good for me, that's good enough. And that's part of what Sunday Assembly is about. That's part of we're trying to get out in the community. We're trying to be visible, working with the homeless, working with environmental issues, working with all different kinds of groups, partly to let people know, hey, we're here and we're not eating babies. There's a handful of atheists who would consider themselves sort of the hardcore libertarians, which espouse extreme individual rights. And there's a little bit of tension. But yeah, I would say, out of the big crowd that you saw here today, you could probably go up to any one of them and say, I support equal marriage, and nobody's going to be surprised. The message, I guess I would say, I never thought about this. God, a year and a half, you'd think I'd have considered this question before. Okay, quick, on your feet. That it's possible to be good without God, if I may borrow the title of Greg Epstein's book. So far, I haven't heard many stories. There's a few people who really do like to kind of keep it on the down low. They're like people like, I don't want you to use my last name on their website. We had that section in the back where we asked people who prefer not to be photographed to sit, because they haven't come out to family, they haven't come out to their coworkers or their bosses. But for the most part, it's funny. The biggest pushback, like when we first started, the biggest pushback we got, other atheists. So the idea of building a sense of community was something that was foremost in our minds from the very beginning. And in the very beginning, it was very artificial. It was very imposed. It's like, okay, we got to do this to get people to feel like there's a community, which was great. I mean, that was necessary. So we were, let's go to the movies, or let's go out for dinner, or let's do this and do that. But over the course of the year and a half, it has now started to gain its own traction. So now we get people, not just the organizers, but now we get people from the community who are saying, hey, I'm going to do a game night, or I'm going to do a pub trivia night, or I'm going to do this and that. I was raised non-religious. I was raised in a small, religiously conservative town, but my parents were not religious. But at a certain point, right after college, I started to think, God, there's got to be more to it than just all of this. So I actually spent a few years reading a lot of books and trying a lot of different things and sort of checking out a lot of different stuff, and eventually kind of came back around to the conclusion that this is more than enough. This is more than I can imagine. The universe is bigger and more fantastic and more awe-inspiring than any story that my species has ever made up in the last 10,000 years. I think that non-religious organizations are going to start to become much more visible, and they're going to start to become much more mainstream. Whether it takes this form or another form, again, look at you guys, look at your generation, look at the fact that now 20% of all Americans declare themselves religiously non-affiliated. Under 30, it's twice that. It's 40%. 4 out of 10 are just like, that's just not my thing anymore. I never did. I was raised non-religious. I went out and I explored for a few years as a young adult. Tried a lot of different things, some New Age stuff, some meditation, some Buddhism, but I kind of always hit that stumbling block. Like I'd come up and I just couldn't convince myself to believe in. I would say the majority of atheists do believe that we have a purpose, but it's purpose that we create for ourselves. We create our own meaning. We create the value in our lives. I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and this psychologist has been doing a bunch of studies across cultures about how do people create meaning in their lives. Well, they do it basically one of 3 ways. Deep reflection, whether you call it meditation or prayer or going into solitude for a while. So deep reflection, engaging with others, building community, and being helpful to others. In other words, making your mark in the world, what we were talking about today, leave the world a better place than it was when you came in. Best advice to somebody who is leaving their religion, for the first time. Just to know that they are not alone, that there are thousands, millions of people around the world who are going through the same journey. Thank God, if you'll excuse that term, thank God for the internet, because that's the way a lot of people have been able to connect with people who are raising these questions for themselves and finding answers. And those answers are found in sharing experiences with other people. So yeah, look around. There's people that you can ask questions